Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My name is Kashmala, and today I'm going to be presenting a Ramadan reflection for being me. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Okay, so for today's reflection, I'm going to attempt to bring in a research concept. It's an analytical tool called reflexivity. And then I'm going to try and combine that with my own reflections from Ayah 14 of Surah Al-Taghabun. So you might be wondering, why am I talking about research? Alhamdulillah, as part of my doctoral studies in psychology, I've been introduced to several different analytical tools that can be used in research. And this Ramadan, of course, it's been very challenging and unique for most of us. I'm trying to use a lot of what I'm learning in my research-based classes and apply it to my study of the Quran, and with the hope, inshallah, of reflecting on the Quran in a deeper way, and of course, connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a different and better way as well. So reflexivity, I'll define it first, inshallah. It's a two-step process. So number one, and this is again within a research paradigm, but you can take it as any student of knowledge or in any field that you are in, or just even for your home and family life. So number one, reflexivity involves acknowledging and accepting and identifying that we all come with complex life histories. So what that means is that whenever we start a research project, whenever we start studying anything, or when we start working on anything, we come with certain childhood experiences, certain traumas. We have our own personalities. We all have certain things that kind of bother us or trigger us, the way we handle emotions, and also the social environment that we are a part of. So the socioeconomic status that we are part of, the privileges that we enjoy, and also the resources that we have grown up with, and also the overall cultural upbringing that we are a part of, and our ethnicity as well. So that's the first step. So you know that you have certain subjectivities, assumptions, and biases because of all of these life experiences. So some people might think about this and think that this sounds a lot like baggage, that this is everything that you come with. So I'm not going to use the term baggage because I think that has a negative connotation. So reflexivity is more of a critical analytical tool. So it allows you to step back and look at everything, positive and negative. The second part to reflexivity is then seeing how are my assumptions, how is my personality, how is my faith, my culture, how is all of this affecting my research process? Everything from the research questions you are interested in, from data collection, the types of participants that you're choosing, and then of course the way you are analyzing your data, and then the conclusions that you are coming up with. So now I'm moving away from research to talk about this more generally for Muslim students of knowledge, for example. So even when we are embarking on our study of the Quran, or even for more advanced students, you can ask yourself the same question. That what about my personality? What about my emotional regulation? What about my mental health? What about my geographical location is impacting or is even contaminating my understanding of the Quran and my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And this exercise takes a little bit of vulnerability and of course courage as well, which allows you to see that, okay, this is not just the ayah. This is not just a tafsir. If I'm reading something and I'm having an emotional reaction to that, then that's something to do with me. Because of course, the words of Allah are perfect, the Quran is perfect, and we as imperfect human beings come with all of our life histories and all of our experiences and memories, and then we come to study the Quran. So just as a personal example, when I had first started to study the Quran more seriously, I was much younger, of course, and I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna go in like as a neutral Muslim person, as if I have no culture, as if I've never heard anything about the Quran, just go in as a blank slate and just take in everything. Of course, I realized very quickly that certain ayahs were speaking to me differently and other ayahs were speaking to me differently. There were certain ayahs that I had more difficulty understanding. And then, of course, there were certain ayahs and surahs that became my favorite. So I really had to understand that it's not just the tafsir and the ayahs, and I'm just a neutral like robot learning the Quran. I am coming in with all of my humanness and all of my subjectivities and assumptions, my educational background, especially in psychology, that I tend to see a lot of mental health, and I tend to pick up a lot of mental health reflections from the Quran as well, and I end up always combining it with therapy, so much so that I'm sure it probably annoys my family and friends now to always talk about psychology and therapy and counseling. But that's my reflexivity. That is who I am, and that is what I am bringing to my study of the Quran, and also when I am doing research as well. So now, how can we look at this concept of reflexivity and combine it with our reflections for Surah Al-Taghabun, ayah number 14? I have selected this ayah particularly because it deals with family dynamics, and I think a lot of us are in the midst of different family situations with the current situation that we are in. So ayah number 14, I'm paraphrasing here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states that some of our family members, our spouses and our children may be tests for us. And a brief historical context of this ayah is that the early Muslims in Mecca, they had wanted to emigrate to Medina to join the Prophet ﷺ and other Muslims, but their family members were literally stopping them from doing this, from going on this trip and from migrating. So these individuals, these early Muslims, were not able to practice their faith in the way that they had wanted. They were not able to join the other Muslims in Medina because of their families. Their families had become a test for them. So now how can we take this ayah, and of course with this particular historical context, and apply it to our daily lives? So one way would be, I think a more superficial way would be to think of this ayah as perhaps as a judgment to our family members, just because it's just easy to judge and shame and blame. And I know that was my initial reaction. I just immediately thought of my family members when I had learned about this ayah, that yes, that's so true. Like, no, my mom does this and my brother does this, and they're always on my case about this. So they're clearly a test for me, and I'm not doing anything. I'm just praying and I'm just trying to study the Quran. So this would be a superficial understanding, I think, of what this ayah is trying to entail. So taking into account reflexivity, you have to put yourself at the center and see, okay, is there a possibility that perhaps I am a test for my family, that perhaps I am making things difficult for my family? And if so, how can that be removed, or how can that be fixed? So I'll just give a personal example, especially for the month of Ramadan. I have a son, preschool age, and he's, of course, always asking me to play with him and to do more physically engaging play. So on more than one occasion, I've said that, sorry, Mama's fasting, I'm tired, I can't play. So now I think has this association that, okay, when you fast, you get tired and then you can't have fun, and then my mom doesn't play with me. So I've had to really stop saying this and be more mindful of this, because I'm creating a negative association in my son's head, who is not at the age of fasting, but inshallah, when he will be, he may perhaps have a negative correlation between fasting and Ramadan and how tired you're supposed to be, and that you can't play or work during this time. So I might have, and just to be very frank, may have become a bit of a test for my son if I don't stop this habit, and I'm working on not saying this anymore, that later on he has this association with fasting and Ramadan. So that's just one very simple example. But again, our words can become a test for our family members. It's not like we're telling them to stop praying or to stop doing something. But if we are, for example, in these last 10 nights, staying up a little bit longer, perhaps we missed suhoor and we're more irritable in the morning, or just we're cranky and we just want to be left alone, then again, that's the emotional reaction that we are showing to these last 10 days. So again, for younger kids, they might see that, okay, like mom is praying more, she's reading more Quran, and she's also more angry, and she's snapping at me more, and everything is bothering her. So again, that correlation is not healthy, because then all of a sudden our kids might end up thinking, or other family members might end up thinking, that when when she prays more, she becomes more angry. Or when she stays up to do more qiyam, she starts snapping more and she's more irritable in the mornings. And that's not the association that we want to have. And that is just one way that we might be becoming tests for our families by worshiping more, but by not being reflexive and by not doing a little bit of introspection and seeing how our emotions are with regards to our family members. So especially in these last 10 nights, ensuring that our physical energy is up, we are also smiling more, and we are emotionally there for our families while we are increasing our worship as well. The final thing I want to mention in terms of reflexivity as a research tool for students of knowledge, whether you are starting your journey to becoming a more serious student or whether you are already an advanced student of knowledge, to of course understand that when we are studying any ayah or any surah or the hadith or the seerah, that it's, of course, that is there, but then we are also there. So the humanness comes into this as well. And you might sometimes feel that you are having an emotional reaction to a particular ayah, but not to another ayah, or one surah really speaks to you, but another surah you're having trouble understanding it. So that's when you have to have a reflexivity diary, perhaps, and ask yourself questions such as, what about my personality is hindering my acceptance of this ayah? Or what about my educational background is not letting me understand the logic of this ayah? Why is that so? Or perhaps, what about my emotional reaction is contaminating my understanding of this surah or of this hadith? So being really critical of yourself, not of others, and realizing that we are coming with our assumptions, with our life histories, to study something as perfect as the Quran, but we are bringing our own imperfections. So this is number one. And secondly, I want to end off by saying that when we are propagating the deen, so when we are talking to our family and friends about religion, about the importance of studying the Quran, about worshiping more in these last 10 nights, especially, again, being mindful that your own childhood experiences with the last 10 nights, your own personality, whether you are perhaps high on the introverted trait or extroversion, certain things will allow you to worship in certain ways more than others. And just because a family member is worshiping in a different way, or perhaps they're struggling in a different way than you are, does not mean that we can judge them or we can shame them or blame them. So again, being reflexive of ourselves, that we are also understanding our own worship and we have a unique connection and relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based on our past experiences, based on our personality, based on our mental health, and also how we are taking in the current situation, perhaps increased anxiety, perhaps increased levels of uncertainty, what's going to happen on Eid, for example. So everyone is going through these things. So just giving everyone a little bit more grace, especially our family members during this time, and being reflexive in order to reflect better on the Quran as well. The last thing I want to suggest before I end off, inshallah, something that our professors always encourage us to do from within a research paradigm, but again, it could be done in any form, is to keep a reflexivity diary. I know for many students of knowledge, they might keep a reflection diary or a reflection journal, which is amazing. But a reflexivity diary is a little bit different. It's more critical. And that's where you write where your own upbringing, where your values, your culture, what's important in your family, what pet peeves you have, how all of those things are affecting your understanding of the Quran. And then you can see how that even affects your reflections and the lessons that you take from the Quran as well. So I hope this helps, inshallah, using this very powerful research tool. It's a qualitative research tool, and I'm speaking more from a psychology and mental health perspective. But again, I think it can be used in just everyday life as well, especially for us as Muslims who are trying to better ourselves with each other, with our families, and of course, improve our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I hope that was beneficial for you. Inshallah, please do make dua for me and my family. Take care, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Jazakallah khair.